Hey, what's up? This is Odolena from Odolena Digital, and today it's Sunday, it's time for another video. Today I'm taking a very ambitious project, a very ambitious topic, so please be kind to me in your comments. Of course, I might make some mistakes, I'm still in the process of learning, but today I'm going to talk about politics, the dirty word politics. Especially now in the aftermath of the American elections, there is a lot of debates and talks about what is the right way. Is it the welfare state? Is it socialist ideas, social democrats ideas? What is conservative? What is liberal? What is democrat? All this kind of amalgam of words and ideas is being used without any ground. And also often I find people use certain words without really understanding the context behind them. So this is why I needed to create this video based loosely on this book. It's called 50 Political Ideas You Really Need to Know. And I really believe that these are ideas that you really need to know. And today I'm going to talk you through the idea of the liberal idea, and how it changed the world as it is, let's say, the one that has been driving a lot of reformation, a lot of changes, evolution and revolution over the last few centuries. And also a lot of reaction and resistance. We have been strongly influenced by ideas that started around 400 years ago. So we're talking about 17th century, 16 something. We're talking about two very big philosophers, British philosophers, Thomas Hobbes and John Locke. So this is in the aftermath of bloody war between Protestants and Catholics in Europe, with a lot of Protestants immigrating to America at that time and founding the United States later on because of the lack of freedom in Europe. And this is religious freedom, this is the freedom of property, ownership of property and entrepreneurship. So Europe is owned at that time by, it's reigned by kings and queens. Let's say the medieval state of order is still on pretty much all over Europe. You have kings, you have some kind of something like governments in some states, but it's very, very vague. It's pretty much sovereign own countries. And what these two philosophers argue against, say if you are a monarch, it doesn't mean that by nature you are allowed to reign. It depends on the people whether you are allowed by them to reign them. And this is coming with a lot of financial and economic implications. Let's say the rise of bourgeoisie, the improvement in technology, entrepreneurship, and all these people that start to kind of take their lives in their hands. And this is a great belief in the individual. So the classical liberalism, let's say what we call classical liberals, are people who believe in the individual and the freedom of the individual to have their religion that they believe in, to not to be disowned by the state, like if the king doesn't like you or someone who's close to the king takes away your property. This is where the liberal idea comes from, and this is actually where the whole idea started. Later on, the French Revolution in the 18th century, the next century, where French people and French intellectuals mainly, it's not the masses as we are taught to believe. These all liberal ideas are driven by the elite intellectuals in these societies. Not by the workers and the poor peasants, but they try to kind of protect the individual. And it's like this huge belief in the individual, that if the individual is left on its own with minimal intervention from the government, it is capable to truly open its creativity, its business acumen, is able to produce, to create jobs, to create economy, to create inventions. This is kind of the time of a lot of scientific inventions and breakthroughs in technology and industrialization as well. And these kind of ideas are also related to Adam Smith, a Scottish economist, the writer of The Wealth of Nations, a very interesting book to talk about. So this book is about the free market, that basically that the market and the capitalism, let's say the foundation of capitalism, is that the market is capable of regulating itself. So you don't need a state to regulate it, you don't need a monarch, you don't need someone to say how much should the cucumbers cost. It's basically depending on demand and supply. Same with the jobs, same with the wages. And they all buy into this idea. And all works okay, let's say, or nobody is paying attention to it that much until the 19th century, when there is a rising concern by a lot of intellectuals again about the conditions of workers, because industrialists, who in the meantime amass enormous wealth through industrialization, start to exploit and have been exploiting workers very heavily. These are times where working in a mine, let's say by children labor is exploited. These are times where there's no healthcare, no free education, there is no specific wages, there's no minimum wages, there's no unemployment checks. Like, all these things that we are taking for granted don't exist. And a lot of intellectuals are kind of forming this socialist idea that, let's say, yeah, the individual and the liberty is great, but we have to do something for the poor. We have to elevate the poor out of their state, to educate them, to raise them to, let's say, a normal human condition. It's again about the individual. Like, can you be a free individual if you are working for this impossible industrialists that are taking everything away from you? They don't basically give you any chance to develop yourself. And this is what, let's say, the Social Democrat Party start to develop. In the meantime, there is another branch which starts to develop, which is much more radical. And this is the Marxist branch. So the Marxist, by Karl Marx, in his manifesto about communism, he believes that we cannot do this gradually. We cannot elevate the poor. We have to kill off the rich. So he believes that basically there has to be a revolution, and that revolution is inevitable, that basically the proletariat or the workers of the world are going to understand their importance, that basically they are the ones who produce, it's not their employers, and they can take the power away. So it's again like, there is no government, there is no sovereign until if let's say the ones who are governed by them do not agree. So this is kind of the time of a lot of strikes, and times a lot of demands from workers to improve their conditions. But he believes that strikes are not going to do the job. Basically, he believes that all private property has to be eliminated and eradicated in order to completely eradicate poverty, to redistribute all the wealth equally to people according to their needs, and to live into something like what he calls a communism. This is where it comes from. So liberalism comes from liberté, freedom. Communism comes from community. And there is these two lines. And in the First World War, let's say, it escalates when Russia ends up being the first communist country. When the unthinkable happens, let's say Marxist-Leninists, and Lenin with his party takes over Russia. And social democrats are really concerned. And this is kind of like also followed up, let's say, the 1920s. So again, free market. Then comes the Great Depression. Then social democrats start to really reinvent themselves to make sure that they elevate the poor. So this is time of huge unemployment, tremendous difficulties, a lot of poverty in America, in Europe. And social democratic policies like the New Deal in the United States by Roosevelt and the Swedish Workers' Party in the 30s, they start to pick up. So they develop this kind of mixed states. And more of these social democratic mixed states start to appear after the Second World War, including in Britain. Let's say in the 1940s, after the war, they found the NHS, which gives free healthcare to everybody. Their companies, steel and coal mines owned by the state. So it's a mix. It's not eradication of private ownership. Private ownership still exists, but there is a lot of intervention from the state into what capitalists do. And also, social democrats and Marxists have been hating each other even before the formation of the Soviet Union or the Eastern Bloc. And now, basically, the Cold War is really a war between the social democratic idea, which believes that we don't need a revolution, we don't need to eradicate private property, we can make it with capitalism, but just making sure that, let's say, people are paid fairly, that they get access to free healthcare, education, their policies for the poor, for the unemployed, for the old, so people can live a normal, good life. That's the whole idea. Whereas the Marxist part believes that people are not grown up yet, So basically what we have to do is to kill off everything, take the state into control, the state owns everything and redistributes to people based on planned economics, which of course proves to be an enormous failure. And until the 1980s and 70s, actually social democratic states seem to be the winners because economy is booming. American economy, European economy is experiencing a strong recovery after the Second World War. The state has a lot of money to spend. They're spending it. It's building houses in Europe, rebuilding roads, houses, all the destruction from the Second World War, providing education. But then what happens is that economically these states start to struggle. Around the 70s and the 80s, a new idea starts to come in. So Milton Friedman, for example, if you look at him, if you look at Ayn Rand, I did a review of her book Atlas Shrugged. It's about this overwhelming liberal state, overwhelming social democratic welfare state which is spending too much, is taking everything into taxes, overspending it, misplanning it, and moving it to destruction, really, kind of obstructing businesses. So they believe we have to return back to the original classical liberalism, or let's say they're called neoliberals. And if you look at Milton Friedman, he has really good arguments about why they should move to neoliberalism. And this is also, there are several factors besides that. So the states, of course, are making less money because heavy industry is in decline. So there is a fundamental shift in economy and technology, because this is the time when computers are starting to first come into people's life. So there is times when finance, when technological jobs, when this kind of industry, information, technology and industry starting to develop and gradually replace the heavy factory, coal and steel mining industries of the past. And for example, England is owning these losing coal mines and they have to close them. So this is the time of the Thatcher era. So Margaret Thatcher being hated so much because she had to close these failing mines and failing state-owned businesses. She had to privatize them. So the neoliberals believe that all that is owned by the state has to be privatized. This has to be given freedom to the individuals, to the businesses, to pick up, to make this economy strong again, because the state is overspending. It is no longer possible for these social welfare states to fully control the economy, because more and more businesses are kind of flexible. There's the emergence of the big corporations, which are multinational. They exist in multiple lands. They can move assets, they can move taxes, they can escape, they can do whatever they want. They are so powerful and strong that it becomes very difficult for this welfare state to continue existing the way it was existing in the 50s, 60s and 70s. Already in the 70s it's struggling, and it collapses in the 80s. And this belief into the freedom of the market, the free market, is working quite well until the 2008 crash, which is, let's say, the fundamental result, again, that when you leave businesses completely deregulated, there will be bad players, there will be bad behavior, there will be people who try to profit unfairly, and there is a need for some intervention. And right now we are at the state, again, probably we could compare this to the time, the 1930s, of after the Great Depression, after the 2008 crash. We are now also with coronavirus that is bringing such a big economic consequences, that we are experiencing this kind of difficulties, that we are not sure where to go. Should we go back to the conservative ideas, to, let's say, the free market? Should we go towards more welfare state? But where would this welfare state get the money? How can this welfare state control, and can it control global corporations? So these are all questions that we are asking ourselves now, and this is where we stand in history. I think in the future, this is my own personal speculation, technology is going to play an even bigger role in the formation of the new political system, in the formation of inventions like cryptocurrencies, like online voting, online technology, internet is going to continue playing a huge role in how we change over time. But right now we are at the stage where we are trying to solve new problems with old tools. Lack of agreement between left and right, and there is no one central opinion. There's polarization. This is all from me for today. I hope you like this kind of video. Let me know in the comments what you think about it. Be honest, be frank. If you know something that I should read about and maybe I've missed in my video, let me know. And I'll be back with a new video next week. Please subscribe to this channel and let's make it to a 10K channel soon. Thank you so much for watching.